Well, I've actually been working with polar bears for a little over 40 years, and each year I've spent anywhere between 2 and 3 months in the field working with polar bears, sometimes longer, sometimes a bit less, but we spend a lot of time doing population studies, and one of the most interesting things that I've been involved in is we had a long-term study of the behavior of undisturbed polar bears, and we would camp on a little cabin on a cliff, and with telescopes and 24-hour daylight that you have in the Arctic in the late spring and summer, we could watch what bears were doing when they weren't being bothered by any biologists in helicopters or Inuit hunters on their snow machines. When you say, what are the big things that I've noticed, the really big ones are related to the warming of the climate and the loss of the sea ice. In western Hudson Bay, the breakup of the ice now occurs a full 3 weeks or more earlier than it did only 30 years ago. That is an incredible difference. Huge changes are taking place in the Beaufort Sea, and the ice north of Russia is showing the greatest loss of any rate of loss of anywhere in the Arctic. So those things, physical changes we've seen, and then the immediate effect on polar bears in western Hudson Bay that has grown steadily, fluctuates from year to year, but it has grown steadily over the last 30 years or so, is that the bears are getting less time to feed on the ice at the most critical times in the spring. Traditional knowledge is not very good at doing, is not really capable of doing. It's not really a fault, it's just not capable of determining what the long-term trends over very large areas are, or what population size in, because they're only looking at a very small location in a village or whatever. As we are with and losing sea ice, massive amounts of sea ice every year, that in time, probably in 20 or 30 years, we will have very few bears in the southern portion of their ranges. It has been forecast that maybe by the middle of the century or a little later, 2/3 of the bears are very likely to be gone. The last ones will survive probably for an indeterminate period of time in the northern Canadian Arctic Islands and northern Greenland, because when the last ice breaks up in the Arctic Ocean, that's where the currents and winds take it to. So the last place to lose ice will be those very northerly areas. But in the meantime, we're looking at very serious problems for bears in some of the southern areas, such as western Hudson Bay, southern Hudson Bay, the southern Beaufort Sea, and everywhere along the Russian coast. This isn't something that's going to change overnight. There are 19 different populations of polar bears in the Arctic. Some are still doing okay. Some, such as right in the very northerly areas of the Canadian Arctic Islands right now, where there's a lot of multi-year ice, the habitat may improve for a short time and it turns annual ice, which is more productive and has more seals. Well, there might be some short-term benefits for some populations. But in the long term, if the climate continues to warm, the outlook is not very good.